Starting turn 5, the only person getting any funds is the Swedes with their iron ore. Nobody's got their economy in good shape. Some of them have it in very bad shape. And now I start dealing out the cards. And I start with Sweden, and I find that, anybody who has funds, I pretty much have to pull the deck and look at it all to see, is there a red asterisk card that I want to buy? It's just, which means a reshuffle every fucking turn. I was afraid it was going to be like that. It indeed is. Not everybody has funds, but I got to tell you, it's hard to get rid of your funds. So, and they don't serve any purpose. They do if you surrender and to fiddle with the cards, and that's it. There's no. You can't like spend one and get an extra card or something like that, which means that it's very possible that you're locked in at your maximum and just can't do anything. Russia is especially problematic because they've got cards that give them funds, and they really or hurt them is sort of the options. I don't know how many others have that same situation, but yeah, it's another mechanism that, some of the mechanisms just don't feel like they work right in terms of historical accuracy. Some of the mechanisms leave you with these, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense type of ideas. Some of them, you can't tell what's what. This one's just obnoxious in terms of play. Again, the game really needs to be thrown into a polisher. And not in the trash can. There's some nice ideas here, but it needs to go through a few years of development from what I can tell. And the rules need to be rewritten. So I'm looking for candidates of cards I want to throw away. I've actually got a reasonable set. The 1-point cards are all these battle cards, and I hate throwing them away because I'm in a war, right? Of course, I'll still be in a war with Poland no matter what. I think I'm going to throw one of these away. I'm also going to throw away this War Glory card. Sounds like a great idea, right? Play this card after you win a land battle, and when you had inflicted on the opponent at least 2 or more losses. Sounds great so far. Sweden's got a great army. Fantastic. What do I get? I get fucking funds. Funds are what I'm trying to get rid of by discarding these cards, because they are useless. There should be some things where you can use funds instead of a card, or you can use them to draw a card, or something. They just pool up too easily. I don't know where I'm going to find my 4th card. Oh, look, another one of that garbage. And I can discard 4 cards. I haven't done this before, and I think I get 4 back. I hope. If I don't get as many back, it's not worth it, right? So I have to find wherever the hell that is. Drawing the rest of the cards. Cards rejection. You can discard a fund. Then you can put up to 4 cards and draw the same number. So I don't have to do 4, but yeah, this is 4 cards that I don't want. To say, I think I got worse back. That's the thing. But I feel forced to spend my funds because there's 2 things I can use them on. I can use them on pulling a red asterisk card, and I can use them on surrender, yeah. And I can use them on discarding cards. Surrender, well, that's not something the Swedes are about to do anytime soon. And the Swedes playing with the discard cards, nobody else did anything. Russia didn't, even though they have piles of money, because, well, wait, somebody did. Russia didn't because they have piles of money, but they're planning on surrendering to Poland because they go before Poland, so they get the jump on who gets to surrender first. It's an advantage, trust me. If Poland got to surrender, this is all that they'd have up at risk, and they'd get to keep this. As it stands, they're going to get a victory point, or maybe 3 funds. Who the hell cares about those? Which they probably can't even hold. Let's see, this is turn 5, so this will be the guy. He has a big fund limit. This guy does not. the Poles did spend all their money because there's a danger that they'd have ended up with way too many funds. They only had $1, but because they know they're going to get surrendered to. And they picked out a nice 3-point event card that will hit Sweden if Gustavus dies, which he's supposed to. Like, he's supposed to go away and Christina comes in, but he can be extended 1 turn, and I bet it's better than leaving him in place. Remember, he can die more likely due to combat, but he hasn't really been fighting. This last turn, yeah, he moved around and did some sieges, but I don't think he fought a battle. I think he's... I don't know if he's been in a battle yet. So now we're on rulers changing, and I've got to follow this each time. I can't just pay attention to the things on there, because there's information here that's not easy to discern, and actually isn't even available as to what the ordering is when there's 2 at the same time. I don't think there's any cases of that anymore, but there are special rules. They're not all noted, so, you know, whatever. One of the special rules, which is under the Gustavus rule, which is over here in the section on commanders and armies, not a place that you'd think of the special rule to be necessarily, but who knows? I mean, where else are you going to put it? I mean, along with some of them, it could be tucked in here. Those aren't all optional. Some of them are real rules that just made it into that book for some reason. I mean, it would make sense if there were different scenarios, but there's basically one big scenario and a bunch of little ones. The little ones, hey, that's fine, but the big ones, the big one applies to anything if the rule is in the right turn span. The other ones will refer to it. But anyway, Gustavus, this handles his chance of dying, and also that if he's on his weakened side on the 5th turn, he has to die. There should be a references here with the translation from Adolphus to Christina. One place where it is kind of useful, the only leader I think who has this, there's a little star next to Christina, which I think tells you, it does actually tell you. Excellent. Okay. So that does help. I would have liked it better here as well, because I rely more on this, because the cards themselves don't tell you the ordering on the first turn, so you learn not to trust. But now on this turn, the card tells you something that the order of ascension does not. Oh well. We have a case where 2 leaders are staying beyond their time. Gustavus flipped over to his weakened side. It's better than Christina. Same thing with Murad IV here. He's better than Abraham. I was going to say, if you're already weakened, I think you have to die. But that is the special rule on Gustavus, so now I'm confused. I seem to remember... I know if you're already weakened and you get a card that kills and or weakens you, you have to die, if you can. Let's see. During a ruler's change, a player can decide if the current ruler stays in the game turn or more. This way it can be prolonged. When it is used, it's possible the next ruler do not appear in gameplay. That is what happened here, where the Austrians lost 2 leaders. So whoever was in place, got to look that up, because I pulled them both off. So we had Matthias, who ruled perfectly fine and healthy. Ferdinand II. It's like 2 people who come in on the same game turn and go out on the same game turn. And there's really no reason. Matthias is better than Ferdinand, so you wouldn't want to get rid of him by some means, but you might be forced to. And neither one's weakened side is better than Ferdinand III, who may actually be Ferdinand II now. Who knows? Maybe this guy stayed in, 10-year turns, whatever. But yeah, I don't see anything here that tells you that you get It is possible that the next ruler do not play because it's rain. I thought there's somewhere where it says they get weakened if they don't. He can only be weakened. Ruler who does not have a successor cannot be removed. See, this is not, though. A ruler can be changed during ruler changing. A ruler can be changed otherwise. During ruler changing, player can decide if current ruler stays one game turn more. I'm trying to see where you get weakened for it. Because the game turn passed. Ruler who does not have a successor cannot be removed. He can only be weakened. Maybe I'm remembering that. Ruler can happen. Yeah, I don't think you actually get weakened. Current ruler stays one game turn more. I swear that that was the case, but now I'm not seeing anything there. Maybe it's stuck in here. It's not here. Besides the reign period of Gustavus, in 6th game turn his card will have to be replaced. Means that Ibrahim will not be used. In 6th game turn Murad the 4th will have to be replaced by Mehmet the... Okay. I'm thinking maybe I saw this. Ruler who does not have any successor cannot be removed. He can only be weakened. Which is weird because that's not something that happens during this phase. You don't get weakened during this phase, apparently. Ruler change can happen during the player due to these, which does weaken you. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that says they have to be weakened. So I guess Gustavus stays strong, as does Murad, and I may reconsider these removals. Oh. I left Murad on his strong side, didn't I? Weird. Oh. Michael goes to 6. Okay. So these guys could actually stay an extra turn. Are they better? Is Matthias better? Yeah, Matthias is better, so he'll stay in. Sigismund is definitely not good. He's a shitty leader. I swear, but I'm assuming that I absolutely swear that I had seen that the leader gets weakened by this, but I'm not seeing by being extended. Sometimes I just don't see things, but I'm thinking that maybe this paragraph somehow had me confused because, and assumptions that, like, you know, oh, I can keep him for a turn longer, but I don't have to pay anything and the next leader's worse. Why wouldn't I? Getting rid of Wallenstein and Pappenheim here. We should also probably get rid of Mansfeld. Might have other miners who have to go away. This guy, there's no one here. Put him with Mansfeld. Let's look through these. Christian is still there. Okay. I put this here because I probably do want to buy the Polish leader now. The king is a leader. Remember, all the kings come in for free except the Poles for some reason, as far as I can tell again. I mean, there's a rule that they all come in for free, and then there's a rule that the Poles, like, if they want their lead, you know, I don't remember how it's worded, but it feels kind of like, the way it's worded, it just feels like it's withdrawing a rule that, or it's withdrawing from the basic assumptions without directly stating that. It tells you what you have to do to get that counter, but it's just kind of weirdly stated and leaves you hanging out there wondering, am I playing this game right? Like so much of it. But yeah, all these guys going, and that means I'm going to be hitting the negotiations phase. First thing here is the Russians. The Swedes can't surrender. The Russians choose to surrender, thereby gaining something. I'm surrendering to Poland. Nothing happens to these unless I want to make some kind of agreement with the Poles, which I do not. What I want to do is I want to buy this here. Now, this is the tough one. You know, I saved my money rather than like discard it because I figured I'll give them $3. What are they going to do with $3? But you know, honestly, maybe I just give them a fucking victory point. What are they going to do with a victory point? I mean, they're quite far from the auto win, and their country is kind of dissolving. But I think I'll pay them the $3. It just, you know, seems more reasonable. And in doing so, I take this away, which brings them from 12 to 10 victory points, so they lose 2. And I gain 8 to 10. So I gain 2. I think it's always 2, but since it's written on every sheet, I don't do that. And the Poles get to return this. It doesn't say where to go. Like I said before, I think it's got to go back to the capital. That's where it would have gone if it was an active force. So, you know, I mean, you could make other assumptions, though. Retreat to the nearest controlled space or something along those lines. Nope. I was thinking, do I want to buy some of these other territories? I don't. Those are not worth taking. That means the war is over. And I already removed the one from last turn, but now the Poles and the Russians, I'll do it in the same way I did it before, are at peace. I don't think anybody else has the opportunity to surrender. Nish hasn't been taken. That's the only thing that gives the... It's really a problem when you can't surrender, right? In most games that have some sort of diplomacy beyond, you know, just roll your own and do what you want to do kind of thing, that have formal surrender rules. Think of something like Empires in Arms or EU, but there are other games that have this kind of thing. There's a cost to surrendering, right? There's a cost. It may mean you're giving up territory that the other person has conquered. It may mean that you're giving up victory points or something, but you're almost always paying the cost. In this game, presumably, I could have just generated a victory point out of nowhere and given it to Poland, which doesn't necessarily hurt me. For example, if I'm not... So Poland has a fairly high victory point total so far, so I don't want to do that. I'm going to give them the cash, mainly because Russia seems to produce cash, and I can't figure out what to do with cash terribly well. So, yeah. And now Poland's quite far from winning the game, and really didn't get much for it. They didn't get much in terms of they got this. Now, there is one exception to this. They do get a victory point for winning the war. That was in the errata that was posted online. So, one victory point gets created out of nowhere. And I don't mind that, right? I don't mind that you get a victory point for winning a war. Nobody loses it for the peace, because there is sort of a peace bonus and whatnot. I do kind of mind that there's no opportunity for a white peace, even just a negotiated, hey, let's not fight, if both players agree. It's just not there. So I think that's the only opportunity for peace. There might be something else. I don't know. I can't think of it. Which means we go to free arrangements. I got to think a little bit here. Nope. So the issue with free arrangements would be, do you want to take... Do you want to steal... not steal. But are you worried in this situation, because there's only two people who are, well, there's two groups that are at war. The Austrians are at war with the Turks. Nobody can really help with that. The Poles could move against the Austrians, but I'm at war with Sweden, and I can't end that war without playing a couple of cards. And I do kind of like that. I do kind of like that there's no white peace for that reason. Sometimes there were wars, like the War of Spanish Succession, that just nobody really wanted the war to continue, but nobody could come to the agreement that was necessary, right? Like, it was obvious and necessary that certain agreements would be made, and nobody would ever agree to them. And in fact, it was just such a mess, the negotiations. There's a game on that, actually, that I've covered. I think it's called Westphalia. It's about the Treaty of Westphalia. Okay. Kind of interesting. I think it's got its flaws, but doesn't everything damn near. Okay. That puts me to then, so the thought here with the free arrangements, why someone might want to do something like that. First of all, you might want to sell territory to someone. Now, the fact that it says remit captured space is a little iffy. I'm not sure if that precludes me from being able to take gray areas. But the wording there seems to have some grammatical issues to begin with. You could just pay someone for secret considerations and whatnot. It's not binding at that point. But yeah, I don't think anybody's going to do anything particularly. There's no mechanism in this game for giving someone a card, for example. That was one that I kind of liked, that some of these lighter CDG, multiplayer CDGs had, where you could do something and it gave a card to someone else. So yeah, I don't see a free arrangement there. The one reason you might see that is it's obvious that there's going to be a war declared. So, for example, if Poland was going to declare war on, the Holy Roman Empire or something, there might be an alliance situation that gets formed out of that, where Turkey and Poland would create one. But I think things are pretty much locked in a way that nobody wants to do anything. And that means we go right to... Oh, one reason that Russia might want to declare war on Sweden, or Poland for that matter, but we're out of Poland now, is that there's a victory point card for grabbing a couple of ports on the Baltic. So maybe I want to look at that. I don't think Russia's really in a position to grab, to fight another war. Like, they would rather see the Poles and the Swedes fight this out, but I don't know. Russians don't have that, but they do have a combination that would have allowed them to end the war without surrendering. And that wouldn't have solved the problem, though. The problem is they wanted this space back. End the war without surrendering, and I don't get that space back. By the way, I've got this little colony that's behind Polish lines that I own. Nita. So I can see where I may have fucked something up. There might be a rule that somewhat controls that. It wouldn't fix that, but it's the city control rule, if I can find that. I may have missed something. Control of the city, the superpowers are at war, army of superpower allied state, operational point. Yeah, there's no requirement there. There's a requirement in the siege, but not in the assault, that if you want to besiege a city, you need to have the supply line going back, and you can't do a siege result otherwise. There is no such requirement for flipping territory over, which feels a little funky to me. Conquering territory is an effort that, similar to the siege, you kind of have to set up something, a government and all that, where you probably do need a line of control going back. So it's something where I would consider, It wouldn't have fixed the situation, though, because the Poles cut that off and left it there. So that has now become, somehow or another, the Russians surrendered and got a hunk of Poland out of it. They got a hunk of Poland and they got everything Poland conquered on them. Neat, eh? At least they paid to get their city back. Conceivably, they could have just said, oh, give us our city back and we will honor you with a painting, or your name will be well known. And it starts feeling like a counting coup sort of thing, where like, I'm getting victory points because I gave stuff back without getting anything. I guess you're being known for being gullible or something? I don't know. Anyway, I think we're on the Mercenaries, which I want to get done, and then strategic deployment before I call it a night, or it's already morning, but it's not deep into the morning, which is, I may be able to get into a reasonable sleep schedule so that I can get up in time for my interview tomorrow. Or feel okay. To do the religious unrest phase before I started the Mercenaries, but I did it kind of after I accomplished at least halfway through the Mercenaries, probably the whole way. Very little happened. People are beginning to lose territory that has religious issues with them. So the Poles did get one here. They got a very low roll, but they're losing territory up here in the Baltic area where things would be problematic, or used to be one of their problem areas. Also, all the rolls came out very low. For Mercenaries, both Austria and Poland bought Mercenaries. Sweden's like, I gotta ship all my troops over anyway, and I'm probably not going to lose many. I don't want to spend on this. But Poland feels like they've got a weakness in the total number of troops. I built it way over here, which probably is a mistake. So this leader is from last turn. He's still there. Now I'm going to probably pay to bring the king on, which works fine. Hey, when do I do that? That's something and the previous kings were not of much value to me, so I did not. But here, can add current rule. So here's the wording. Player controlling Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth ruler can add current ruler to any army. That's pretty much what defines it. During the commander's changing, the player must discard one freely chosen card, but not a special card. I may not buy that mercenary then. Because I gotta look. I'm gonna be paying a card, and I don't have very many anymore. I chose this one even though it's a reaction that allows you to fuck with movement. The Swedes don't have a lot of cav, so this might not hurt them very much, which is the reason I chose to use that. But yeah, they can place the current ruler as commander of any non-rebellious army. This is, these are just rulers, or these are just counters, leader counters. This one doesn't have an asterisk or anything. There's nowhere where it says the Poles don't get to place their leaders as normal. All there is this, which kind of implies that they don't. But there's nothing about other rulers, so it just, this is kind of the nature of the game. The way these rules are written, that's the kind of shit that you run into, and yeah, it causes a small crisis in my mind every time I see it. It's like, how come this wasn't caught in playtesting? How come nobody complained? Was everybody taught the game and played it in front of the designer, and the designer made all the rules decisions at the moment? And, I don't know. You got credits for playtesting on this? I don't remember if I looked. I think we do. Nope. So maybe You know, maybe there was no playtesting. We've got a couple of people who contributed to the English version of the game, whatever that means. I'm assuming translation or proofing or something for whatever good that did. But yeah. Now, some games don't credit playtesters. I think I've brought this up before that maybe it was playtested, but however it was done was definitely insufficient and certainly under the English rules. Definitely it did not come out. You know, and I don't think it's just a translation thing. Given the way the rules are set up and everything, I think they're equally confusing under any language. All right. So, yeah, I got to make my decision on that. And then I'm just so fucking lost in terms of, because I got to keep flipping through the rulebook, find the sequence of play over here. There is one more thing, which is the strategic redeployment of the armies. Something else up here. On video, of course. So commander's changing. Okay. Ruler. Commander whose reign is prolonged by one game turn is not represented as commander. Oops. Who's commanding an army? Gustavus was commanding an army. He is no longer. I knew there was something. I knew there was something. I'll look for someone with a low number. 5 or 6. 4 through 7, since they're all the same. And so the entire set goes down to C now. But yeah, what I wanted to look up was whether or not you had any chance to rearrange your commanders in this 10 years, or at least the magical time between every 10-year period. You know, whether or not leaders can reorganize. It feels very, very weird that, you know, over the course of a turn even, you can't just fly leaders around pretty quickly and change their commandings. But boy, does it feel weird that there doesn't seem to be any kind of allowance for you to just rearrange where your commanders are in between turns. Although, of course, I would gripe then that you can only do it once every 10 years, which is pretty goofy anyhow. But that's the scale and scope of the game. It's something that probably doesn't really, I don't know. Like, you should be able to play a card, a point or something, to move a commander to somewhere else. Just through connected territories or whatever. We'll ignore Charles XII and riding through uncontrolled territories. But what I wanted to look at was the naval deployment. Yeah, so each combat point, no, each ship allows me to move one, is the general rule. Not here, but in the other location, this was addressed as errata. So, since I only have 4 ships, 8, I could have pulled everybody, right? 1, 2, 3. Do I want some cav with me? Sure. 4. That means everybody else will go up here. I don't know. Where do I want it? That's the royal question. I no longer have Gustavus, so sieging Danzig seems like a hard thing. However, what else am I going to do? Place here, I guess. And I can only go to the port. I don't think I can go. I'm not sure. Naval deployment armies can be declared. I know normal sea movement is just across the point. It's forbidden to combine land and naval deployment. You can only use one of these 2, which means if your capital's not a port, you're not doing naval deployment. I'm trying to figure out what to do with some of these countries. So Russia's at peace again. Remember early in the game I couldn't figure out what to do? Well, I'm back in that position because, you know, what do I want to do? Do I want to move my armies or whatever? The answer to that is I don't know. But, I can deploy an army. Let's deploy this as an army. That's allowable. I can create a synthetic army for a moment. An ersatz one. I obviously there's stuff I can do in the game that's not military, but also like, well, okay, I'm bordered two countries that I'm not at war with. I think I would have had to declare war on the Tatars if I wanted to. Tatars, damn it, if I wanted to go face them. But there's not really anything that I can get from that I remember. Now, remember is an important factor because, for example, the 2 ports here, I believe that's a card. That's not something in the rules. So, again, you have to memorize all the cards to be able to understand what your national goals are, right? Now, it's a red star card, so you probably have pawed through it in the deck a few times if you have any funds ever, but yeah. All right. Ottomans have nowhere to go. Austrians can redeploy, I think, Army C here to go down with these others. Now I have to leave one garrison there, but that's okay. And then the Poles. Well, the Poles are at war with the Swedes. Deployment doesn't have to go from the capital. Nope, it does. One army stationed in the capital. So I could shift this way down here to deal with that problem. That is not what I want to do. I can't withdraw this at this point. It's the wrong time for that. So he's stuck where he is. So yeah, all I could do is deploy out to face the Swedes. I could get a little bit closer to them. I don't know if I want to do that. Or I could push my force forward. I'll leave it where it is. And probably curse myself for it. And now I come here, and this is not the page I want, because I need this page, which goes to the player's impulses. Mark that down. And I don't know how much I'm going to get to play tomorrow, but whatever. I feel like getting through a turn of this in a day, even though, there's not... Granted, I'm spending most of my fucking time playing my video game. But the amount of angst involved in playing a turn of this, like in some other games, for different sorts of ways, I really don't feel like I could get through more than a turn in a day. And I feel like I kind of did that today, so that's pretty good. Didn't get any laundry or shopping done. That's not so good, but whatever. All right, still trying to push through here. Yeah, we've already started this video, so no reason to give highlights type of thing. The Swedes moved some of their troops over to join, who's this? Axel Oxenstierna. All my commanders are the same at this point, so no biggie there. The one biggie, yeah, let me bring another commander over in case I want to split my forces. I have some things I could do, like I could have played an army rebellion. If I played it here, it wouldn't do a hell of a lot. This isn't, the army that's facing me. If I put it on this guy, which is the larger army that's facing me, the way I'm interpreting it, without having to move the leader, I could roll paying an ops point to quell the rebellion. He's very good at it, so it wouldn't make sense that the king is rebelling either. So, I think my interpretation is correct, that if there is an officer there, they can roll. You don't have to move one. The only place where you're allowed to move an officer on his own appears to be you can spend one. Now, maybe there are other options in this. I'm going to play that. Let's find the Army Rebellion space. So Army Rebellion, commander's authority. Paying one operational point, the commander is moved onto the space occupied by the rebellious army. Paying an additional operational point, the player rolls a die and can end the rebellion. There are all kinds of things one could insinuate about that, like you could normally just fly an army commander for 1 point, which would make a lot of sense. It appears to be, they can travel anywhere without restriction by doing this. But the only place this is mentioned is here. There is no other place in the rules that I know of and I've looked, but not just recently, that you can move your army commander about for one, or one of your army commanders about for one. It also seems to imply that you have to move an army commander there. You can't just use the one that's there. So, like most of the rules in this game, problematic. I think I've touched on that one before. It's hard to tell. There's just so many things that are so poorly expressed. Next country that went was the Russians. They took their cash with their card. I'm probably going to try to work on this or that. The polls are busy, so it might be a good time to go for Cossack control. And now for the Ottomans, I'm going to play this. This is for an event. I've checked. The Austrians don't have a spy. Obviously, the Ottomans didn't check that. They were going to play this anyway. Player controlling the HRE must select any 3 from his or her combat units and immediately move them onto a space in the Reich. The Holy Roman Empire decreases its domestic policy by 1 level and loses 1 fund marker. Luckily, I have a fund marker. It's a good idea to keep them around because there are cards which either take them away or sometimes allow you to pay, but usually it's take away. I lose 1 of these, a whole level, and 3 of my units. Well, all of my units are here except the garrisons. It doesn't say I can't use the garrisons. So I must select any 3 of my combat units and move them onto 1 space in the Reich. Okay. I'll move them all to here. Now, notice this is interesting, and I understand the historical situation. So Breslau is owned by the Austrians, but these territories never were. Now, that may indicate the weird situation in Bohemia at the beginning of things, but did I screw up? Sagen, Oppland, and Brunau. So I've been missing, I did not set up correctly. I've been missing that the Austrians have religious unrest in Bohemia, which they definitely should. And yeah, almost all of it is Protestant, which is why. I'm assuming Linz and Graz are not. What about Prague? Prague should also have been this way. And so that explains some of why the Austrians have been so successful. They haven't been fighting the religious wars at all. This is my fault entirely, just not noticing because almost all of the markers were on the pale yellow side. Okay. But I do have to also move 1 of my military units from here. That'll be this poor thing. And they're all gathered. This is gone from the game. But it's not just the rules that are fucked up, I'm fucked up too, right? Once again, whatever I did with the batteries made me switch, have to reset the time. This seems to happen every time I swap batteries out. I don't know what's going on. So the Austrians are playing this as a response, basically because I'm worried that if I move in here to besiege it, I get intercepted. Not even sure if I can be, but that I want to reduce the Ottoman capability for military because they have such a big army. So their military has now been given a shift to the left, and their card play has been reduced. So that'll hit them. That gets me to the Poles. I'm awfully tired because I only got a couple hours of sleep, but I have to stay up until midday at least. Play a mercenary switch sides card. The Swedes have no mercenaries. They're who I'm at war with, so this is safe. And we're going to move into here. But I react with march column breaks apart. Must divide into 2 equal groups. Then you determine which group stays on occupied space. You know, I don't want to split my army. Since this happens at the beginning of movement, I don't think, again, that any points are spent. So now I have 2 points to spend. You can't move through Russia. I really want to get down here and clean this issue up. I actually don't have a way down here that's easy at all. Shit. Well, I'll move this instead. I announced I was moving this. The forces split. I no longer want to move it, right? I don't know if that's the intention of the card, but again, there are so many issues that are unresolvable easily. Basically, to write the errata for this would probably take about as much space as the rules actually currently do. Which is why I say it just needs a rewrite. It needs a complete rewrite. It was not ready to be published in any, it wasn't close. All right, that's it for now. I'm just too tired to go more than one round of cards. More of a long-winded coverage that I'm giving, and I don't know why I'm being so long-winded, but the decisions are tough, and I have to say, this is the case with the other games of this genre with the cards. So the Swedes are in a position where I'm at war with Poland. I didn't want to get into other wars. I have a force that may or may not be able to handle the Polish army. If we look at the leadership, the Poles outgunned me there in terms of troop strength, 2, 4, 6, 10, 14, 15, 16, 17, to about the same 15, 16, 17, 18. Now, I have military advantage, but so do they. Neither of which matters really because we're, running up. Basically, we're both pushed up against the edge. The reason there are so many troops in both armies is to absorb casualties and still be able to fight, I guess. Plus, it's the only battle that's going on. Now, I can't really move away from here without risking that to being taken. You could go try to capture Danzig or something, but then the Poles, with their good command, might well take it back from me, and I might end up back a space. What I'd really like to do is end this war. I don't have a way of doing that because at the beginning of the turn I couldn't surrender to Poland the way that Russia could. Because Russia was winning the war, but there were some Polish territory, some Polish captured territories inside of Russia, so they're able to force a peace on the Poles that was advantageous to the Russians and whatever. Got all their territory back and got to keep some stuff in Poland and whatever. But mainly got to end the war because the Poles are bigger than them. So the Swedes didn't have that option, which seems unbelievable anyway. To try to force that, I could march on Warsaw, But like Danzig, it opens up the same problem. And worse than Danzig, well, maybe not, because I won't have a port if I'm cut off here. I can be cut off by the Poles and thus not be able to siege them. Now, I have a bribe of a city, which would allow me to buy it, but the problem is I don't have anything that, I don't think I have anything that prevents the Poles from making a move. Let me see if I do have a reaction card that stops them from making a move. It might be worth me running in here and blowing my money on the next card to capture that. I'd have to have a 1, 2, 3 card to get there, and then a reaction card. So this is, if the reaction card is a bad weather or something like that, it is along the lines of, I have mystical abilities to influence the weather. I don't mind that much, the more abstracted the game gets. So, Sword of Rome, I barely mind it at all. Here I stand, it begins to get at me worse, a little worse. In some of the more directly military CDGs, it really, really bugs me when you have cards like that. Indeed, I do not, oh boy, my battery's almost dead already. I do not have such a card, however, I have an assassination attempt. If I could reduce the ruler here, the whole balance of power, or get rid of him, the whole balance of power shifts drastically. I could make an attack directly on Vilnius, try to push him away, and try to force a peace out of that. So I'm going to go for this, and now, because I'm being so interactive, I have to flip through everything and see if there's a spy, and whether or not the Poles would want to play it, because the odds of this succeeding are low, but the cost is high. All right, so on a 5 or a 6, I'm able to essentially kill Vladislav IV, but this won't affect his ruler card. It just knocks him out as a military leader for the rest of the game. I do not get that. And that's, you know, a nice card, one that allows me to get a free manipulation that I've just thrown away for this. I don't know if these are, it's hard for me to tell. I don't know if 2 pluses are better than 3s. You know? A lot of times I'm like, oh, I don't want to use a 3 for this. But the 2 plus may actually be better because of the fact that it gets you a free manipulation, at least under my reading of the rules. Again, I have no certainty that is the correct interpretation. Yes, you know, what's kind of interesting, I bet you the reason I can't get the card is because I have to, every time the battery comes out, I have to reset the date. It's like all the internal power is gone. And that's why I'm not able to access my normal memory card. Why the camera never was able to access its internal memory, except under weird circumstances, is something else, and we won't think about that too hard. Before I go on to the Russians, you know, the designer is being relatively responsive to people who post on his thread about questions. The problem I have is, like EU, if I wanted to devise a set of Europa Universalis, if I wanted to devise a set of questions for this game, I'd be coming in with like, you know, three pages of questions. Maybe not as much because this is a smaller game, but I feel like the proportion of problems outside the events in EU is just so big. And again, you know, what are your expectations of a particular game? With EU, I knew I was going to be playing it for months. Turning out I'm playing this for months, but that's my problem. Well, for a month. I knew I was going to be playing that for months and really, really invested in it. It's a game that probably takes minimum 60 hours, probably closer to 100. This should not take that as long as it's taking me, because I'm explaining so much and working so hard at the questions there. But EU, even with all the questions kind of resolved in my mind and baked in, it still took, you know, well over the 60 hours. 60 turns, at least an hour a turn. You know, it took longer than that. Solo, because of solo. If it wasn't solo, it might take less. But this should be something you could probably play in a long day. You know, it's definitely going to be longer than, because the hands are bigger than Here I Stand. So, you know, instead of maybe 6 hours, look at it at 12 or something like that. But not worth the effort. And also, I had a lot less games then, and a lot less games that I didn't know. You know, so like putting that effort in at that time in my life was worth it to come up with, you know, this huge set of errata for that game. And, you know, sure, I could ask this one question or a couple that are top on my mind, but man, it's just, you know, you need somebody who was willing to do the kind of thing that I was doing for EU to be able to get a reasonably complete set of answers. And there's somebody on there who's put in like 8 or 12, but that's still a minuscule fraction of what there's going to be. There's going to be like 30 to 40 questions at least. Remember, I mean non-picayune questions, right? Big questions, ones that significantly affect play. Sometimes, you know, if I'm talking about that 3 pages of questions, some of them are going to be, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know how this works out, but I want to, you know, hammer out to make sure that I'm interpreting it right. But, you know, there's direct contradictions and stuff as far as I can see. Plays, and I may have made a mistake, not a rules error, but a tactical one. I'll get to it. The Russians played a card to twiddle with the Cossacks. The Turks played their Sultan grows in power for its effect, so that they get more cards or keep getting cards or something. They don't get many, so. And then the Austrians, and this is where I may have made the mistake. I moved into here. I'm going to be able to siege through this space, and the Turks can't do anything about that. At least how I interpret things. But interception failed, which is why I can't go back, really. And the thing is, I have such a big hand of cards that I could maybe outlast the Turks. Of course, they've got a couple of cards. They're allowed to hold one of them. So, you know, they might have been able to play a card. I'm actually well disposed to being the inactive player in a fight, though. I have some nice cards to handle that. I'm actually well disposed in either direction. So, you know, I'm going to chance the fight. I've got a better leader and a nice handful of cards. I'm pretty sure the Turks don't have both movement capability that's good and combat capability, so the interception was really the biggest danger. And now to the Poles, who I have no idea. I don't know what they're trying to do, right? There was an assassination attempt, and I would love to get down here. This guy was walking there, so that's probably what I'll be trying to do. It's a long walk, though. A long walk for not a lot of impact, right? It'll be a domestic policy dev point if I don't get there. Which is like, geez, maybe I should be spending on the Cossacks instead. Because losing control of them would be a shitty thing. You'd do that. You know, the problem with doing this much in depth in a game is I only have so much battery life. I'm okay now. And you could say, well, you could shatter less. Yeah, I know. And then I would get more play in and be done with this and able to move on to the next thing. But somehow I feel when a game is this troubled, like, just like when I'm doing a playtest video or something, I feel like I have to dig into it. Especially, you know, when, and it's not so much for the viewers, but it's sort of for the designer. Hey, maybe you should really consider the points that I'm bringing up. Did have a card that, and also CDGs, I mean, they almost just ask you to examine each play so carefully because you are doing this mentally on each play. Otherwise, it just becomes sort of a bland narrative. even if I have more fun that way. So the Swedes do have a card that could screw with this army. They threw it into rebellion. That means that there's some chance, same with the assassination, that the Poles may be locked in to that location, so I can slip in there. Maybe. This is a harder path than, just a reaction where you can't move, or because it was going to take 1, 2, 3 movement points to take control away, or 3 to get here, depending on what the Poles wanted to do. But taking control away is 3 to take the control away, which means that like any card, if I could take 1 operation point away in a movement, it would be good enough. In a case where it's important the order you do things. So the first thought I had with the Turks was, I play this 3 points, I build 2 more of these big expensive cav units. Actually not that expensive. These big cav units. I mean, they're cheaper than these, but they have a lot more manpower. They're probably the European cav. And move into Bucharest and try the attack. I have a bonus card. Sounds good to me. But I don't want to do it in that order. I want to do the movement first, and there's a good reason. It's a good thing that I decided that, because I looked at the Austrians, and they have this, which could cost the Turks an operations point, which meant if I built the armies first, they wouldn't get to move. Given that that's been played, I've declared my movement, so I have to complete it, I guess. I don't know. Because what happens if I... So with the things like the splitting of the march column or whatever, the way I've interpreted it is, you played this at the beginning of your movement. Well, I choose to play no points for my movement. Now I choose to do movement with that unit again. And whether they suffer attrition or whatnot. I think the Austrians are going to hold off on playing this because it doesn't do them a damn bit of good at this point. So the Turks moved into there. They've got 2 points left after the fight. We're going to be doing a fight there, though. The Turks get to go first. So I could get a column shift to the right. That doesn't help me. Should have just played the 1-point card. Yeah, then I would have been foiled. Okay, so I have maximal value, but I have a column shift to the left, so yeah, we'll say that I can cancel that out. And now for the Austrians, who also probably are at maximal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. There's something I got to do. I had something in mind and I forgot what it was. I don't fucking remember. Okay. So both are at maximum. The Austrians already, no, they're at even on battlefield. So I look to see, I have an advantageous command. I could shift it in my favor as well. There are no mercenaries. That's not a reaction anyway, but I have optimism. I get a column shift to the right. Even if I lose, I don't have to leave the space. This solves my problem. I could also play this that allows me to re-roll one of my dice. I have another optimism in here, but I think that's the best single card use, and I think you may only be allowed to play 1 card. I don't recall that. I had some thoughts of, well, I could play them both together and improve my chances, but it doesn't really. The optimism is good enough. So I think we're both at the max level. The Austrians have a 3, and we'll use blue dice for the Turks, who have a 2 leader. So the Austrians get an 8. That's going to be 5. Oh, I know what I forgot. I forgot to take my attrition move. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be 5 losses on the Turks and 4 on the Austrians. This is a victory. This is a big victory. Which is going to mean the Turks would have to retreat, even though the optimism, the optimism doesn't really matter, but the Turks would have to retreat. But it means we get the war experience, which means the military DP marker moves 1 to the right for the Austrians and 1 to the left for the Turks, which is really 2 to the left. And our army is getting piss poor. It's declining fast. I screwed up. The Austrians had to fight these guys first. 2 strength points. I would fight them without cards, so we would have been at maximal on that. Always forgetting this. Okay, so that's 9 at maximal. That would be 5 hits on them, and 7 with a strength of 2 does nothing. 5 hits is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So nothing was really lost. This would have happened. It would have cleared them out. It's so easy to get confused because I don't see that I don't see the piece as being I don't see an army there is the main thing. There's not a block there. When you start putting things like these army blocks, it's hard to recall that there are units that are not army blocks. There are stacks that, have to actually fight. So now I look for a card to proceed with the siege of Bucharest. If I win in that siege, I win the game. Oh, I could do an assault maybe. Could I? I could do an assault. Hold on. So I'm using this. I have 1 point left on that card. I could do an assault. I have at least 6 full strength. Oh, maybe not full strength. No, I only have 5. Shit. Okay, so I got to do the siege, which means I need to get 2 hits. I get 2 shots at a 3 or less. Okay. I did not, but I will get to keep going on my next turn. Now I take a loss here, and I don't know what the hell to do with 1 point. I took my freebie there to boost my military. I honestly don't think that there's anything I can do with an operational point. Oh, I can move some of these guys. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. All right. There. They got collected up for no good reason. And to the Poles, good God. So the Russians are really fighting for the Cossacks, which to me means they must have that card. So since, oh, no, I can't afford to because I've got the rebellion, so I got to quell the rebellion. This game is probably going to be over as soon as, because the Austrians have so many cards, and there just aren't things, somebody could play a bad weather or something like that, I guess, on them to delay. They should have done it on the last turn. There's people who have it. The Poles have one, for example. I'm going to play this. I roll 1 die. On a 4 or less, I have succeeded, but I have 3 shots at it. So, yeah. So we got rid of the rebellion. And this is why it doesn't really make much difference. Plus, the Swedes aren't going to win the game. And then the other thing is, now I have 2 more points. I'll keep moving this thing, I guess. 1, 2 to here. One thing you notice is that it really behooves you to keep some garrisons out in the hinterlands because it's a hard trek to move them there. And you may want to do free redeploys to do that rather than, maybe move an army a couple spaces. So that's the end of this one. Jeez, we're so close to being over. I don't know how much battery I have. I think I'm done for a little while. because I need to charge my batteries. Oh, that one's lying. For the first time in the game, the Swedes are actually going to play 2 cards, which kind of defeats their purpose because they're hoping to kind of outlast the Polish hand to be able to do something. But there's so little that I can do, and I have to play 2 cards to be able to spend everything on a track. Well, to be able to spend more than 1, again, by my interpretation. And I just don't have cards that do me a damn bit of good other than moving my economic marker. So this is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, boink 5, and move it up 1. Now players at this point are actually like, hey, seriously, Austria's just about ready to win the game. You gave them a shot last time. Somebody be ready to stop them. Should have happened on the last roll, but still, they've got enough cards that they're going to be able to outlast all the siege prevention cards, the storms and stuff like that. And the Turks have one more shot to try to march in and fight, and that's it. Here that shot happens, playing a big 3-point card, it's all I have, trying to prevent the game from ending and kind of complaining that nobody else is doing a damn thing. I got enough to be at max level. Not sure the Austrians do. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yes, they do. The Turks obviously do not have a reaction they can play. However, I have another optimism. Which again, it ensures that I keep the space. Which is all I need. And the Turks are at max level, but they're back 2 columns. Whereas I'm actually up a column for what that matters. It could have negated, like, if there's a negative effect that does that. Alright, so the Turks get a 7 on there. That's going to only be 2 hits. The Austrians get an 8. That's going to be 5 hits. That's going to be another point on the military tracks for both sides. Yeah, this is net 0. I think I'm allowed to move that back. I don't think it works like the top level. The top level, once you're there, you're at the top, but you can still have change left over, but you can't move more change, which seems weird. But and we fall back. And you know, I haven't checked, but there's plenty of Ottoman cavalry, so they're not going to be taking any pursuit losses there. The Austrians play a 2-point card, fire off the siege, and only Poland was willing to reveal that they had something that could prevent the siege. Now, the way I did that, because I'm playing solitaire, because this often is kind of like a game of chicken at a table, what'll happen is everybody will kind of sit there and look at their cards. You know, if it's a, hey, somebody's going to win, but this doesn't really help me. It just helps prevent the win, and it hurts me to play the card. Everybody kind of tries to pretend they don't have such a card. But before the siege roll is done, somebody's going to jump in and say, yeah, is that I roll a die for everyone. Now, I gave the Poles a bonus because where they had to be chosen twice in a row, whereas anybody else randomly would only have to be chosen once. And they actually were chosen the first time. Because they're in the most dire circumstance. So they are the least willing. They're kind of in a position where they're saying, you know, I really can't afford this. You can make arguments that that's not fair, that it should have been perfectly random. So no siege happens this time, and I get to keep moving this guy, however. I don't think that impacts the reaction, does it? Play during when he activates an army to move or a siege attempt. See, this is the thing. I am activating a different army to move now after that first one. But the thing that worried me about this was if I activate an army to move and it spends 0 operations points, it would still be, you know, you could make the rules lawyery argument, I don't buy it, that, well, okay, I didn't get to move it, but now I get to move it. it's not really, to me that's cheating. Essentially, it's a cheap try. But the thing is, the game is not worded in such a way to preclude stuff like that. There's not a good enough definition about what happens, what impacts come when you start a move and whatever. Now, to do that, you'd have to really, really put a lot of rules in play, and I'm actually opposed to that kind of level of trying to nail things down. That's what causes the rules bloat in the GMT games for fairly simple games. But, maybe a single sentence along the lines of, if you end your movement without spending any points, you can't move again. Because you have to be able to move again in your operation, in your impulse, with the same army. Because you're allowed to move, convert a space, move, convert a space. Or there could be a rule that says you can only start movement once with some exclusions. This doesn't prevent further movement by that unit. But it would require a sentence of that line. And that wouldn't be too expensive. Although it would probably require an example for people to fucking understand it. Because... okay. So that means we dodged the bullet this round, and it's back on the poles, and they're burning through cards like mad. And we gotta swap batteries. I think we're gonna finish this on this camera play, though. The battery, the deep time thing didn't come up this time. So I was wrong. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've had that happen before. So the Poles have an interesting situation. They've been fighting the Russians over Cossack control. Could be a big deal. That's, I think, a way that they get their victory points, right? Each turn they have the Cossacks under control, and they're afraid they're going to lose control of them to the Russians permanently due to the event that requires you to be there. They're not, but they're afraid of it. However, they have their two special cards, each of which comes as a penalty if they play it. They have rats, which might be able to slow the Swedes down, and they have an ardent enemy if things start going badly. That's 3 or more national spaces under control of a superpower, gets me a pile of troops. I'm going to go once more with this. I just don't have anything that I can do about the Swedes is kind of the problem. So we'll take one more shot. Because the way the Russians have been focusing on that, I am so sure they have that card. I'm wrong, but that's how I look at it. Oh, all right, on another. See, I'm almost out of tea here, which is problematic, but we'll go another card. Spent a card they kind of didn't want to spend, their diplomacy card, with a reshuffle for that matter, because they have an immediate end of the war, but they're only allowed to preserve one card. The immediate end to the war is the rarer card. The diplomacy serves more purposes, though. But I would rather be able to get out of a war than anything else. So if I'm going to hold a card, that's a valuable one for me. And moved the Cossacks further. Turks didn't get to do anything, and here we are. And I got a lot of chances. I still have a fair-sized deck. Nobody has anything that can prevent this. 2 shots. If either one rolls a 3, the game is over now. It is. So, this is played. You win. Yay, it's over. Looking at the situation, other than, obviously I made mistakes, I may also certainly tactical or strategic mistakes in playing the game. No question. First time you face something. The need to know the decks to play it effectively. I don't know if it's any worse than Here I Stand on that. And Here I Stand, there's more events in this. There's more things that you need to know. In Here I Stand, you could make like a cheat sheet of a few things that you really need to know about the different players. Here, they kind of try in the strategy tips with things like, with the Demetriids, for example. Let's see. Where they're telling you on the second game turn, use opportunity and join Demetriids. But that's too sparse, and the grammar and whatnot doesn't make it clear. The fact that, like, to get the 30 Years' War to work, you really have to know in advance that you need a sequence of cards. On the other hand, if you're paging through your cards every turn to look at your events, you at least have you have the opportunity to know those kind of things. So you really do need to know what the events are, though, the primary events in the game. You can't just sit down like you can in a game of Twilight Struggle and have a fun historical game off of, like, without knowing. And that impacted, I think, a significant portion of my play. The biggest thing that I saw in this game, in this playthrough, was Poland and Austria were in this position to win the game real early. I don't think Austria won the game automatically on turn 1 or whatever. I think you have to actually conquer the minor. If you're allied with the minor, you don't get the space. The Ottoman subjugation rules are a special thing. Now, I need to look at those rules to see if they even say that you put that marker. I think I've done this before. But whether you actually have to put that marker, whether you get to put that marker down when you convert it. So, that's different. I'm looking for regaining. Establish vassal subjugation in 2 ways. Subjugation, yeah. The Ottoman Empire puts a big control marker on the cities that, well, no, that says at the beginning of gameplay. It is kind of interesting. The rules don't actually explicitly say that if you reestablish vassal subjugation, you get the marker back there. I'm assuming you do, but again. Because if you don't, the Ottomans are in a lot of trouble if they ever lose those. And it's fairly likely with the Michael the Brave card that they will lose a couple of them. And they just will never have, like, the hand of cards that other players get, even if unless they conquer them. Now, maybe that's the thing. If you play the event Diplomacy, you may not get it, but if you conquer the national space, you can choose vassal subjugation or conquest. Has to be all the national spaces of the territory. So it may be that the Diplomacy card doesn't give you control of the fortified city. I'm not sure what happens if conquest matters, if you conquer this and this, which are all the national spaces of Wallachia, if you get to keep your little marker here. I think you get to keep that one because that's the original situation, but I don't know. And if it's Diplomacy, what happens? Again, I don't know. One of many places where the rules just leave me with a number of different options. These are what I consider impactful questions, but like ones that would go in that maybe not in ones that would go in that 40 because they actually impact the rules of the game, and it's hard to determine what might be meant. I couldn't phrase it as a yes or no question, without expecting some elaboration. It's sort of hey, I see like 3 different pathways that you could interpret this. Which one is correct? I guess maybe they could give me A, B, or C, or D, none of those. Figure it out on your own, or explain it. The designer's being good to explain it. I'm making fun of Avalon Hill here. And no, they never answered questions with D, none of the above, guess. It just felt like the way they asked you to write your questions required that you expect that. Okay, so what mitigates these situations? The Austrians had two cards, either one of which, well, no, one of which they could start the game with, guaranteed. So there is a random chance, if they have a specific card out of the deck, that they're in a position that they're really close to winning the game, and there ain't a lot other people could easily do about it. Poland could interfere with them. The Turks obviously are going to be stripped dry, and that's why the Habsburgs have such a good chance of getting close to victory. The other issue is the Ottomans have no way of getting out of the war. So if the Habsburgs turn the tide on the Ottomans, this is going to be very, very likely. It took a long time to get to, though. I had to play a lot of game to get there. Enough time that all the other players could have come to an agreement of, hey, let's stop picking on the Poles and let them do their job to save the Turks. Yeah, right. But yeah, if Poland goes to war with the Austrians, big expense there. Their army is powerful enough to really mess the Habsburgs up. Okay, so that's one side of it, and I think that one's kind of problematic. The other side is the Poles, who are in a position to win the game, like right from the beginning of the game. They have, a couple of these, but they have so many people on their border that they can be stopped fairly easily. I think it would be possible for them, though, on the first turn of the game, to declare war on Russia and almost guarantee a victory on that first turn, which is better even than the Habsburgs have. Now, with knowledge of that first turn of the game would be devoting all energy to stopping the Poles from winning, at least by Russia and Sweden. And if they're doing that, the Habsburgs have a fair chance of winning the game. So I think there's a flaw with the balance here. Now, and with how the game is going to play out early on. Given the amount of fuzziness in the rules, and, maybe I'm playing something wrong, maybe I'm interpreting things wrong, and it doesn't work the way I think, and it's nowhere near that easy. But in some ways, it feels like maybe the only way for Poland to win is to grab it in that early part of the game. But the other side of the rules being so fuzzy is I don't trust that there was sufficient playtesting of the game. And that, this situation that I found fairly easily, a dedicated group of players may have come up with a strategy of, yeah, we got to beat up Poland on the first turn or whatever. And it just becomes baked in if only one small group was playtesting this. If that's the case, it's kind of impressive. I mean, I'm always impressed with designers. Just the fact that they're able to get their design on the board and everything. Don't get me wrong. I can't do it. I've tried and have never gotten anything to anywhere near this kind of shape where it was something that I would think about sending out prototypes with the rolls and whatnot. I've only actually brought playtests to my own player group a couple of times anyway. But that is probably the biggest of the, hey, it's not just bad rules or personal tastes in terms of play or anything. That's probably the biggest of my worries about this game, is that you're not going to get a historical situation very easily. If Sweden and Russia start the game at war, I mean, at least without significant plays. You don't, and if you look at the play suggestions, well, first of all, Sweden's not in great shape on turn one. Now, if they and Russia both turn against the Poles, they can probably stop things. But it kind of looks like, on turn one, you're forced to deal with the Russians, at least to some extent. Maybe just to try to slow down, prevent their advances. There's not much for them to gain, so they may not prosecute the war very hard anyway. But now it's too late because the Poles have already won on turn one. And then they suggest that you should be getting into this Dimitriades event inside Russia. Again, you're violating Russia. If we take a look, the Tsar is in deep crisis. During your first game turn, try to change your ruler, which we did. When the Dimitriades begin, try to fight within the Russian cultural zone. Do not be afraid of losses and repeat attacks. Again, it doesn't sound like there's any... There's no warning for these two players, the two people most likely to be able to stop Poland. Hey, you've got to stop Poland on turn one. Because it really does look to me like Poland declaring war on Russia on turn one, which is a 3-point war. Yeah, it's cheap because they're historical enemies at this point, is likely to actually win the game. Russia has a shitty army, not a great set of cards to begin with, I think. I think they're, I don't know where these are. They're over here in the errata. So yeah, their military sucks, and their domestic policy sucks, so their cards aren't very good. They might last the turn, and if they do, that might change things. But I think there's almost an ironclad strategy for the Poles to go in against Russia, and unless the Swedes and the Russians are aware, they're not going to be able to stop that. Now, can the Austrians stop it? Well, they're tied down with the Ottomans. They can't really afford to throw their weight somewhere else unless they can get the Ottomans to agree, hey, let's all be at peace and fight the Poles. This is the same kind of thing that had to be done early on. If the argument is that the Austrians might win, is that Russia and Sweden have to agree to leave the Poles alone with the understanding that the Poles will destroy the Austrians. Now, that's a very ahistorical war situation. The Poles going in to try to save the Ottomans. So I'm left with this kind of feeling that I don't think it provides... I think the initial balance of the game and the ease of victory for the two powers that are involved, I think it creates situations that don't mimic history. I think, the in-game objectives are going to drive the history or the game into very ahistorical situations right off the fucking bat, if the game doesn't end in a victory with a Polish invasion of Russia or a destruction of the Ottomans. I think it's pretty fucking unlikely that the Austrians are going to win on turn one. I think it's pretty likely the Poles are. And so I see the Poles as more problematic, even though the balance of power might allow the game to be balanced if everybody comes up with negotiations and whatnot. But in order to do so, it's going to be a very ahistorical situation leading to an automatic to prevent the automatic victory. And the automatic victory itself, that enticement of Poland going into Russia on turn one, is less ahistorical than Russia and Sweden ignoring their war to stop Poland, or Russia and Sweden continuing their war under a negotiated agreement with the Poles to attack the Austrians. Those are both, very, very unbelievable situations, especially the latter. But, yeah, I mean, the Polish... The thing that I think that is likely, which is the Poles invading Russia on turn one, is very believable. It's not historical. It's not what they did, but it's much more believable than the alternatives that could stop an automatic victory by the Poles in turn one. That's it. I'll come back with the review part of this. I could be wrong about the initial situation again, because the rules are so questionable that maybe there's something major that the designer intends or whatever that has prevented other, the playtest side of things from getting into that situation. I may have just missed something. I don't know. But my views are that it is, there's something very promising about the game, but it is so far from being ready to be published that, yeah, it's just a sad thing that, it came out in this shape. In case you want the big takeaway of what the review is going to be, which you should already know by now if you've been watching. All right, up and at 'em.